Going to jump in where we left off a couple weeks ago, Job chapter 23. I'm going to start reading at verse 10 through verse 13. And I'm reading out of the NIV version, so my Bible may read just a little different from yours. Amen. And the Bible reads, "But he knows the way that I take. When he has tested me, I will come forth as gold. My feet have closely followed his steps. I have kept to his way without turning aside. I have not departed from the commands of his lips. I have treasured the word of his mouth more than my daily bread. But he stands alone, and who can oppose him? He does whatever he pleases." I'm going to just continue with the same thought, trusting what God allows. And if I had a subtopic this week, it would be, I believe God. An author by the name of Viktor Frankl wrote a book called A Man's Search for Meaning. In this book, he talked about his time being a prisoner in a Nazi war camp and how he survived going through all of this trauma that was associated with that. In this book, he says his worth, value, and significance helped him in surviving some of the most difficult and devastating moments in his life. Years later, as he was being interviewed, they asked him, "How in the world did you find your worth, value, and significance while being a Nazi prisoner in a Nazi war camp?" He corrected them quickly and he said, "It wasn't that I found my worth, value, and significance being a Nazi prisoner in a Nazi war camp, but it was knowing and remembering my worth, my value, and my significance that wouldn't allow me to die being a Nazi war prisoner in a Nazi war camp. It was because knowing who I was and knowing whose I was did not allow me to die in a place beneath my value." And that's all I want to do this morning, is to encourage you to remember who God is when you're facing unexpected obstacles in your life. I want to pick up this week right where we left off a few weeks ago with trusting what God allows. A few weeks ago, we discussed that there are times in our lives and there are things that happen that simply catch us off guard. In the word of the Visa commercial, sometimes life just comes at you real fast. We weren't prepared for it. We never chose it. In fact, we almost were mad that it happened the way that it happened, but God allowed it. There are some things that have happened that we can't even begin to wrap our minds around, but God allowed it. There are some moments and some seasons of our life that are just plain difficult to navigate through, but I encourage you to remember the kind of God we serve in unexpected moments of your life. That's exactly where our brother Job did. That's exactly what Job did. Remember, Job was an upright man who lived and dedicated his life to God. Everything was good until it wasn't. You know the story. We don't have to go back through it. Everything was good until one day it wasn't. And out of everything Job faced, out of everything he endured, financial hardships, his children dying, his friends doubting him, it was because he remembered during those difficult moments who God was that caused him to hold on to his hope. It was remembering who he was and whose he was that caused him not to take the advice of his wife and just curse God and die. But it was what he remembered that caused his faith to go to another level, even in the midst of what he was going through. And I'm looking at some people this morning that may be going through some things you never thought you would have to go through. You may be facing some things you never thought you would have to face. You are enduring some things you never thought that you would have to endure. Financial issues, physical issues, family issues. But I come to encourage you this morning to remember and rest in the fact of who God is. Because while you can't dictate the road you're going to travel, while you can't control what God allows in your life, you have to have peace in suffering, knowing the characteristics of God. And because you know his character, you know he won't allow you to suffer and come out the same way you went in. Job had the confidence even while going through of who God was and what God could do. Our text this morning shows us that Job, during this season of his life, remembered 3 things about God that we should all hold on to. I gave them to you the last time. He remembered that God was omniscient. He remembered that God was omnipresent. And he remembered that God was omnipotent. The first thing Job teaches us is to hold on to the fact that God is omniscient. He knows all. Job says he knows the way that I take. He knows the way that I take. Even when situations come in our life and rattle our cage, we must remember it didn't catch God by surprise. Even in unexpected moments, we must give God praise because through it all, God knew all about it. He is the God that stands on the outside of time looking at your beginning and your end. So there's nothing in the world that could happen to you in your life that God does not know about. He is the God that knows all, even when I don't know a thing. And when anybody else understands, and it doesn't matter what nobody else understands, and even dark situations that you won't even talk about, you should be able to give God praise because he knows all. He knows the path you take. He knows the burdens you bear. He knows the tears you cry. He knows what you're facing. He knows what you're dealing with. He knows about your anxiety. God knows all about it. And if you're going to get through the unexpected tests in your life, you need to remember the omniscience of God. Not only did Job talk about how omniscient God was, but in verse 11, he talks about the omnipresence of the Lord. In verse 11, Job says, my feet have closely followed his steps. I've kept his way without turning aside. I like how the Message Bible said, that's the young people Bible. For those of y'all don't know, that's what they say, that's the young folks Bible. The Message Bible says it like this, I followed him closely, my feet in his footsteps, not once swerving from his way. Job says, I was looking for God and saw traces of him. Job says, I was looking for God. And in the midst of looking for God, I saw his footprints. Now, when I was first studying this passage, I had sort of a mixed understanding about verse 11. Then it jumped on me. Whenever a hunter or a searcher is looking for something or someone, when he sees footprints, it's an indication that whatever he was looking for has been in the area. So what Job was trying to get us to understand here in this passage is that no matter where he went, God was there. No matter where he turned, he seen footprints of God wherever he went. Somebody in here this morning, and you need to know that the only reason that you've been able to survive what you survived is because God was in the area. The only reason you didn't go under was because God was in the area. The only reason you didn't lose your mind, throw in the towel, is because God had been in the area. Pastor Wright says it all the time. People ask him, how did you succeed 30 years being a pastor with a good name in a city that you were born in? How did you do it? Pastor Wright told him, I'm sure, because he told me, he said, I would have walked away from it a long time ago if I had to do it in right power. But I could hold on because God was in the area. If God would have left my side, I would have had to leave y'all alone. I probably wouldn't even have came and told you. He probably would have stuck a letter on the door and said, goodbye, see you later. I'm not coming back. But because God was there, God was here. And if the truth be told about it, that's the reason why most of y'all in here looking the way you look this morning. After all you've been through, if it had not been for God being in the area, ain't no telling where in the world you'd be. Ain't no telling where in the world what would have happened to you. And I wish somebody could just keep it real about it. You wouldn't even be looking like you looking. You wouldn't be here. You driving like you driving, living like you living. If it had not been that for the traces, the footprints of God all around you. See, sometimes the enemy will try to make us feel like we're all by ourselves, but when you look back on things, you know God had to be there. When you look back on certain situations, you know God had to be holding you up. When you look back through times where you thought, I just can't take it, I can't make it, there's no way I'm going to get out of this, you know God had to be there. I was talking to a sister last Sunday, and she was telling me about a dark season in her life. She was telling me about a divorce that she had went through and how things had just got so terrible and how she was almost without hope. But look at her now, and look how God has brought her from that place to this place. And when she said, when I look back at the situations, I know God was there all the time. And sometimes you may not feel him, but you ought to be able to trace him, especially when you look back on it. God, that had to be you, because I remember that night when I was driving in my car and I wanted to drive it off the bridge, but something wouldn't let me do it. You were there all the time. I'm looking about 5 of y'all who could just holler at your boy and say, ain't no sense in me playing, ain't no sense in me being cute. It was God all the time. I don't know about you, but I'm glad I serve an omnipresent God. I'm glad I serve an omnipresent God. You've got to come to the point during your test, during your trial, during whatever you're facing, you've got to have 100% confidence in the fact that God is walking beside you, that he is right there with you. In fact, there is somebody here this morning, the enemy is confused at why you're shouting like you're shouting, why you're still coming like you're coming, why you're still smiling like you're smiling. And the reason that I am is because God has been by my side. The reason I could shout like I shout with everything I'm going through is because he said he'll never leave me nor forsake me. He'll be with me to the end. Is that your testimony this morning? The reason that you're still going, the reason that you're still pushing, the reason that you're still getting it together is because God is with you. God is with you. God is with you. I'm thankful that Pastor Wright is by my side. I'm thankful that my wife Brandy is by my side. I'm thankful for my brothers and sisters. I'm thankful for the parents who've adopted me. But if the whole world walk off and leave me, I'm glad I got a God who won't leave me nor forsake. Some of y'all thought y'all had friends, lifelong friends, ride or die. But when the road got rocky, they jumped off the train. But I come to tell somebody, you better know that God is a God who will keep on rolling when the road get rocky. He'll keep on riding. Yes, Lord. Talking to somebody who's facing a test, and during your test, you're wondering, how in the world am I going to survive it? Well, you're going to survive, number one, by remembering God is omniscient. God knows, Sister Wright, even when we don't know. He knows. He knows. Secondly, you're going to survive by remembering God is omnipresent. God has always and will always be right there. But the last thing that you have to remember is that you have to rely on the fact that God is omnipotent. That word omnipotent means all powerful. That word omnipotent means that all power, all might is reserved for our God. Listen to what Job said. Job said in verse 13 and 14, but he stands alone, and who can oppose him? He does whatever he pleases. He carries out his decrees against me, and many such plans he still has in store. Listen to what Job says. Job says, he says, God stands alone. Job was telling us God is sovereign. Who can argue with God? Because God does exactly what God wants to do. And not only does he do what he wants to do, he does it when he wants to do it. Job concluded, I don't know how my life is going to turn. I don't know what streets I'm going to take. I don't know what is going to happen, but I know that God has a plan for my life. So it's no use in me complaining. It's no use in me crying. It's no use in me throwing a fit, because God is sovereign. God is sovereign. God is going to do whatever God wants to do. God is not moved by my feelings. God is not moved by my tears. God is not moved by my complaining. He is not swayed by my fussing. God is sovereign. He is going to do whatever he wants to do. So I have to get to the point where I realize that my life is in his hands. God is so powerful. My life is in his hand. The book said, take no thought for tomorrow, because tomorrow is in his hands. So we can release a lot of our stress, a lot of our worry. We can come off of some of the medicine that they prescribe if we just let tomorrow be in his hands. If we just allow God to have our life in his hands, if you really buy out to the fact that God is sovereign and God is going to do what he wants to do, that would relieve us of a lot of stress. Kirk Franklin wrote a song that says, my life is in his hands. Kirk said, you don't have to worry. You don't have to be afraid. Joy comes in the morning. Troubles don't last always. He said, there's a friend named Jesus who will wipe your tears away. He said, if your heart is broken, just lift your hands and say, I know that I can make it. I know that I can stand. No matter what comes my way, my life is in his hand. Job had a revelating thought that in the midst of my trial, in the midst of my transition, Job said, I trust that God is in control of my life. Job, I'm almost done. He said, was totally clueless as to what direction his life was going to take. But the shout of the text to me is when Job said, I don't know which way my life is going to take, but I'm confident after he's tested me, I'm going to come out as pure gold. Job said, please don't miss it. He said, while there is a question mark over the direction of my life, while there's a question mark on how this thing is going to play out, I'm confident in a God who can do anything. What Job was saying was, no matter what comes, no matter what goes, I believe God. Church people really don't know when to shout. Job says after he's been through all he's been through, he's still going to come out as pure gold. He even goes so far as to say he's still got plans for my life even after this is done. Job says, I know what I see, but I believe God. I know what the doctor said, but I believe God. I know what I'm dealing with, but I believe God. I know what has happened, but I believe God. And that's the place a lot of us have to get to today. A place of not allowing our circumstances to determine our beliefs, but allow every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of God to determine our destiny. See, the key to managing tough times is determined by what side of the butt you put God on. You missed what I said. How you manage tough times in your life is determined by what side of the butt you put God on. See, if you put God on this side of the butt, I know God is in control, but I feel like giving up. I know he said he would make ways for me, but I don't think it's going to happen. I know God said he was going to fight my battles, but I don't think I'll come out with the victory. See, when you put God on the front side of the butt, you've already put yourself in trouble. But when you know God is an omnipotent God, and when you know he can do anything but fail, when you know that God is all powerful and all might is reserved for him, you know you'll put God on the backside of the butt. Oh, God, help me. I know I'm broke, but he said he'll provide all of my needs according to his riches and glory. I know I'm sick, but he said by his stripes I'm healed. I know they're trying to get me, trying to take me out, but he said no weapon formed against me shall prosper. When you know you serve a God that's all powerful, who can do whatever he wants to do, there's no issue with putting him on the backside of your butt. I know everything is going on in the world, but we serve a God who sit high and he look low. I know everything what they say about the economy, but he said he owns a house, a cattle on 1,000 hills. I know what they said about this pandemic, but he said by his stripe. When you know you serve a powerful God There's no reason to put God on the front side of your butt. And that's what the problem with a lot of us. That's why a lot of us have gone into despair. That's why a lot of us have gone down. That's why a lot of us are in depression, because we got God on the wrong side of our butt. We've forgotten that God is the one who's the author and the finisher of our faith. I come to tell somebody this morning. I come back to tell you this morning. You better remember why you're going through tough trials, why you're enduring tough things, who God is in your life. You better hold on to the fact that God knows all, that he's everywhere, and he can do anything. Would you stand to your feet and tell whatever you're facing that I serve a God who knows all, who's everywhere, and can do anything. I know what it look like. I know what it feel like. But you serve a God who knows all, who's everywhere, and can do anything. I talked to Job this morning before I came to church. I said, well, Job, how did it happen? How did it end? He said, a lot of people will stop there. They'll leave me with boils all over my body. They'll leave me broke. They'll leave me without my family. But if you jump over from 23 to verse 42, you'll see that the Lord had blessed me with double. You'll see that God had healed my body. You'll see that my faith had gone to another level. I come to encourage you that the groaning of this present time shall not be compared to the glory that will be revealed in you. Don't lose your mind, because you're going to need your mind for the glory that's coming. Don't you lose your hope, because you're going to need your hope for where God is taking you. Don't lose your family, because you're going to need your family for this next level where God is taking you. Don't you die. In verse 23, because God, if you endure, if you push through, if you remember that he's omniscient, he's omnipresent, and he's omnipotent. If you remember that he knows all, he's everywhere, and he can do anything. Your 42 won't look like your 23. Now I need somebody who's in 42 to help somebody who's in 23. Would you help me close this sermon and say, I know God, he's able to do it. I know God, he's able to pick you up. I know God, he's able to heal you after a divorce. He's able to restore you after a death. He's able to put your family back together after everything that has been going on. Is there anybody in Calvary Temple of Praise who could help me help somebody by letting them know God won't leave you in the mess you're in? If you faint not, you just got to remember while the times are tough, you got to remember while the blows are coming that he knows all. He's everywhere, and he can do anything. I don't care what it look like. Tell cancer, he knows all. He's everywhere, and he can do anything. Tell corona, he knows all. He's everywhere, and he can do anything. Some of y'all, you may feel like you're losing your marriage, but I dare you to walk into your house and say he knows all. He's everywhere, and he can do anything. Good morning, Calvary. Happy birthday, Pastor Wright. I just come to encourage somebody. Don't you die in what you in. You better remember that God is an on-time God. He can do what he want to do. You better remember in the back of your mind, no matter how hard it gets, God, he can fix it. He can straighten it out. He can put it back together. Don't you die in what you in. Don't Don't you die in what you in. Don't you lose your hope. Don't you lose your smile. Don't you lose your joy. God got it. 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 Because he knows all. He's everywhere. And he can do it. Is there anybody here who loves my Jesus? Is there anybody here who loves my Lord? Won't you slip your hand up in the air and say, God, I remember, and I won't forget that you are God. You are powerful. You know everything. You are everywhere, and you can do anything. Somebody give your God a praise.